Genuine Mitcham lavender, growing in my back garden in Mitcham. In fact, my house is built on a former lavender field, and I think that's what inspired me to write my second novel, Lavender Fields, which I published back in March. It's taken me a while to put this together because I've been held up with work and family commitments and whatnot. So it's to accompany my second novel, and the locations are going to be Seven Dials, Covent Garden, Mitcham, and some filming I did up in Bedford back in 2019 before the lockdown. Leave any comments you like, good or bad. It doesn't bother me. I hope you enjoy it. Right, so here I am in Seven Dials, and this is the vlog that's accompanying my second novel, Lavender Fields. This is where the book starts, and it's called Seven Dials because there's 7 rows that all met up with each other.
But then I was thinking of getting like a rail.
And they all met in the middle, so it was given the name Seven Dials. And let's get some bearings as to where we are, because it's pretty obscure here. Okay, so over there to the south is Covent Garden, Longacre, and then to the east there's Kingsway, Holborn, and then to the north's Bloomsbury, and then over to the east is St Martin's Lane, Leicester Square. Right, so this is where the book starts. This is where Emma Paget grows up, and she's born here, and her family live in what was called Great Andrew Street. All the roads have been renamed now, and it's where the book starts in the 1870s. Right, this whole area was built in around the 1740s, and there's still a lot of the original buildings left. I mean, this building here is an original, and I'll actually put up a photo of it just to show what it looked like in the 1870s. Now, I mean, this column here, this column wasn't here. That was put in later. It wasn't here when the roads were originally built, and it wasn't here in the late Victorian era. That was added later. But yeah, I'll put up a photo of what it actually looked like in the 1870s. This whole area was built in around the 1740s, and like anything, any buildings built, in London or other cities, they were all nice and lovely when they were first built. As the years went on and landlords didn't want to pay much money to keep them up, and they gradually fell into sort of disrepair as the years went on. And of course, the worse the condition of the houses are, then it attracts a more poorer demographic. So come the early 19th century, the area had really gone downhill, and it attracted a large transient population, really poor demographic by that time. Had a large Irish community, which I do write about in the book. They escaped Ireland in the 1840s, escaped the potato famine, came over to England and for work and to escape starvation, basically. So the action starts in Great Andrew Street, what was called Great Andrew Street back then. Now all these roads have been renamed now. Right.
So back then it was called Great St Andrew Street. It's now called Monmouth Street. We're just going to go down here and take a little look at where Emma Paget and her family lived at the beginning of the book. I'm going to go and have a look so you can see any of the lovely ghost signs they got around here. I'll do some filming of some lovely ghost signs. And back where I've just come from, which I think that's also Monmouth Street now, that's been renamed. That was Little St Andrew Street. There's a lovely ghost sign down there that I remember driving past all the time when I used to work around here. And yeah, it's lovely. I'll film that later. I'm just going to go and have a look down here. Great St Andrew Street, now Monmouth Street. And I've got Emma and her family living off of in one of the little courtyards that they have dotted around here. It's like a very, very poor area. Oh, there's a lovely ghost sign. Let's just film that. There we go, look at that. It's lovely. Pictorial postcards and general stationery. Yeah, great stuff. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So we're just going to walk down what's now Monmouth Street, and if you notice, like all the buildings down here are the original. These are all the original buildings from the 1740s. Yeah, lovely old buildings. I say lovely, they weren't lovely back then in the Victorian era. You know, it was a very poor area. There was a lot of poverty, squalor, malnutrition, very unsanitary conditions, open sewers. Everyone shared one toilet. I mean, if you can imagine these windows, all these floors here, most of them would have had maybe 2 families living on each floor, of 6, 7, 8, 9 kids and adults. So if you can think, each building would have been around 30 to 40 people living in just these floors here on the first, second and the third floor, and they'd have all shared the same outside toilet, or privies as they were called. Imagine sharing a toilet outside with 40 odd people. Yeah. I mean, nobody washed, no dental hygiene. Imagine the smell around here. Not only that, they had horses that did everything. Horses, and they crap on the floor, so it would have been full of horse manure. Yeah. Yeah. Plus the open sewers, yeah, so the smell wouldn't have been nice. I'm just going to walk up here and see if you can see. Oh, there's a. Oh yes, Neil's Yard, that is, yeah. So Neil's Yard, a famous cheese shop, I think they're called Neil's Yard. I think it started life there, I don't know, I might still be there. This is a lovely little courtyard. I'm going to go and have a look in here. And in the book, I call it Perkins Buildings. I sort of got my inspiration from a place called Perkins Rents over the back of Victoria Street, and St Anne Street in Westminster. And yeah, sort of Perkins Yard of buildings are fictitious. And this is sort of where they would have lived, in these sort of inner courtyards. Yeah, very narrow. You can imagine this in the days where it's full of sewage and general shit. And yeah, this is where they would have lived, in somewhere like this. This is all like very upmarket now, very touristy. A lot different from when I used to work around here in the late 80s, 90s. until my youngest son, when I was pregnant with my youngest son, so that was 2008. So it was 20 years I worked on this area, and it's all been gentrified and airbrushed, ready for tourists. Yeah, changed a lot, yeah, since those days. Of course, if you want to live around here, you've got to have pots of money. Right, this is a lovely building. I don't remember this. I didn't work around here that much. This wasn't really my area. Looks like a French hospital. Used to be a French hospital. Of course, not now. So it looks like it's some type of restaurant, hotel place. Yeah, so very touristy around here. Yeah. So I did have a job round here. I don't know, it was early 2000s, in an agent provocateur shop, which is a kinky underwear shop. That's they got branches dotted around. I know there's one in Pont Street in Belgravia, but I got sent over here to do a job, and I'm not too sure which one of the roads it's in. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I got sent over here to do a job in a agent provocateur shop. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I mean, this wasn't my area. I mean, this is I'm just trying to remember what area this is fed up. It's either Covent Garden or Mayfair. I can't remember. I sort of equate everything to BT Exchange areas because that's what, you know, that's what I did when I worked around here. Yeah, it's either Covent Garden or Mayfair. I can't remember. And my areas are Mayfair, Whitehall, and Gerrard, which is over the back of Leicester Square, Feast, Chinatown, parts of Soho. And I'd only get sent off area if it was a job no one wanted to do. Piece of crap that everyone had elbowed, it'd always end up in my lap where the novel starts. And this is where Emma grows up, before it was gentrified. It became a tourist hotspot. Okay, I'm just going to walk around the corner to one of the other 7 streets that lead off of 7 Dials, to what was Great White Lion Street. What was Great White Lion Street is now called Mercer Street. Yeah, I mean, when they renamed all these roads, each 7 branches of the 7 Dials, each 7 streets had their own name. So you had like Little and Great Earl Street, you had Great and Little White Lion Street, Great and Little St Andrew Street, and Queen Street. And the only one that kept the sort of like is just called one name. This is like Monmouth Street. It goes straight on to the sort of southern part of Monmouth Street. It's Shorts Gardens. That was a form of Queen Street. Right, I'm going to walk around to Great White Lion Street now and show you where Emma lived with her boyfriend Charlie. So I'm just going to walk into now what is Mercer Street. This would have been Great White Lion Street back in the Victorian era. And this is where Emma moved with Charlie, her boyfriend. And obviously this building on the side here, this is all new. This is a new building. Yeah, there are some original buildings left. I think that's a church at the end of the road there. But some have gone, some didn't survive. I mean, what I was filming earlier, the coupler, that was original. That building there, that's not original. Neither is this one here, this Cafe Nero. You know, I mean, and I managed to get planning permission for this awful building here in the middle of an area built in the 1740s. I don't know. It looks awful. But anyway, this is Great White Lion Street, and this is where she would have lived with Charlie. Okay, just gives you a general idea. That's, they lived in rooms on the first floor. I've said it above an ironmonger's. I don't know whether they had an ironmonger's in those days, but it was just a generic store and generic shop. Okay, so I'm just going to walk over to Covent Garden now and do a little bit of filming. But this is Seven Dials. There we go. Well, I'm just showing you this old ghost sign. I remember it from when I used to drive through here, because you used to be able to, I don't know if you can drive down here now. I think it's all been pedestrianised. I know you can't get out onto St Martin's Lane because they put bollards across the road. I remember I used to drive through here out onto St Martin's Lane. Can't do that anymore. But this is the old ghost sign. This is fantastic, and this probably dates from around the time the novel's set. Yeah, can't make out the top. Can't really make out the top. It says flag, G flag or D flag. Established 1847. Saddle and harness maker. Large stock of second-hand saddlery and harness. Horse clothing. Yeah. Oh yeah, D flag. Yeah, that's it now. Yeah, of course in those days the horses did everything. They used horses to, no cars or nothing. And the roads would have been full of horsemen here. I think they had a guy going around shoving it all up, I think. Yeah, so just showing you that sign. I remember that here from years ago, back in the 90s. Yeah, so I'm just going to head back to Leicester Square Tube and head off home, which is down there. Yeah, you can't drive down there. There's like bollards there now. Yeah, there we go. So just giving you some idea of Seven Dials and the area. Yeah. Okay. Right, there we go. Okay, so this is Covent Garden, and as usual I picked the wrong time of the year to come and film these vlogs. It's at the height of the tourist season, kids are off school so it's evening. But there you go, I've got to fit all this filming in days off work, and I had a couple of days off last week but it was so hot, it was like 30 degrees plus nearly every day last week. Last thing I want to do is go traipsing around the West End in the heat. Having worked around here for 20 years in the heat, it's not very nice. Right, now this is where Emma and Charlie would have gone to buy their fruit and veg, pushing their barrow. Well, he probably pushed it.
You know what? We should take.
Yeah, I mean, like in those days, you know, Covent Garden was the main fruit, veg, and flower market in London. Right up until like the early 70s. It moved out of here in the early 70s because of the congestion around it. All the roads were all clogged up with all people coming and buying their fruit and veg, and of course in those days in the 60s, you know, oh yeah, we don't want to upset people driving cars in central London, do we? So let's get rid of the fruit and veg market. Complete opposite now, trying to deter people to not drive around here with a congestion charge and whatnot. So yeah, in the early 70s, I think it was 73 or 4, it moved out to Nine Elms, and that site, I mean, I think they're gradually winding that site down now, but I think that it's now called New Covent Garden, and it's most of that area is being redeveloped now. All Nine Elms and Battersea Power Station is being redeveloped with just what we need in a city with a chronic housing shortage. High-end flats go for about £1 million each. Yeah, what we all need. I think they've even built a tube line out. They've extended the Northern line out to Battersea Power Station now. I think there's a couple of stops. I'm not too sure. Yeah, so this was where Emma and Charlie would have come to buy their fruit and veg. Now, when the fruit and veg market moved out in the early 70s, you know, the area became really run down. It was really really got run down. It was full of tramps, rough slaters, drunks and whatnot, and it was really run down. And then, like, I suppose come the early 80s, lots of there's a bloody guy down there playing a saxophone, if you can hear that racket. Yeah, there's a lot of sort of street performers and performance arts thing come along, and jugglers and street performers, and of course it started to attract visitors and tourists, and so they were like, oh well, they want to spend their money here and go and eat, so they then redeveloped what was the old fruit and veg market. And I'm just going to walk over there now and feel inside of it. So it got refurbished, I think in the 80s, the sort of early 80s it was refurbished, and it's full of all like restaurants and shops. Of course it costs a fortune to eat up here. Anyway, any tourist area, they rack the prices up. All the years I worked up here, I could never afford to eat up here. I always bought my own food up. But this would have been where people came to buy their fruit and veg off all the various, farmers coming up from places like Kent and Essex and Surrey and Hertfordshire, places like that. They'd have bought their fruit and veg in here and sold it to all the various, hotels, restaurants, costermongers. Yeah, would have come here. And there's a big flower market as well, but this is what it looks like now after it's all been refurbished. Yeah, and this would have all been full of people, buying and selling fruit and veg. Yeah, okay, so this is where they would have come to, Charlie and Emma, to buy their produce. Yeah, okay. Just got a bit more filming to do for my third novel that I'm just about to publish. Yeah, and yeah, that's Covent Garden. Yeah, okay. This is now the tram stop. This is Mitcham tram stop. Right, this is where they'd have all got off, the Pagets. They'd have all got off the train here. Of course, it's set in the 1870s, so would have been a train. And they'd have all got off, and I think there used to be some steps going up there that used to be the station building there. So I should imagine people would have left the platform here. This was probably part of the original platform here, and people would have got off the train, and this would have been the platform along here, and people would have got on, climbed up some stairs to get to the street level, and then exited the station building there. But this has all been revamped because it got converted from like a British Rail overground to the tram back in I think it was the late 90s. It was converted, but they've moved the station up slightly because I remember this as an overground. I remember this as British Rail, but I never actually used this station. I was living in Colliers Wood then, so I wouldn't have used this station. That's Malden Road there, and I actually used to work down there. BT had a place down there, Mitcham TSVC, and I spent a year working there doing my apprenticeship, and I went on loan for a year. Came back and they folded the group up. We lost all our work. I'm just going to go across the road here and film the station building. Okay, I've decided to just delete the audio from this video I took because it's just so awful. I didn't have an external mic at the time. I was just trying to shout over the traffic and it just wasn't working, and you can't even hear my voice. So I'm going to do like a sort of a voiceover. And basically what I'm saying is this is the station building of the old Mitcham station, and it's situated on London Road where I'm standing. And the picture earlier you saw showed it in the 1870s, and it was just like a mud road. It wasn't paved, it wasn't tarmacked, and it was very, very rural. And I'm basically saying that road there is Malden Road, and that's where I used to work back in the late 80s and into the sort of early 90s. And yeah, that's it. That's sort of getting some bearings. To the right that's Bishopsford Road, that goes up towards Sutton, and to the left that goes into Mitcham town centre. Yeah, okay, so that is the station building from Mitcham when it was a British Rail overground. It's now a tram stop. They've moved the station up slightly, and you access it at the side there. That's just as you go over the bridge there, you access it to the side. And yeah, when the Pagets came to Mitcham, this is where they got off, and they'd have walked out of the station building, out onto London Road, and they'd have walked into Mitcham town centre. Yeah, and I've sort of, in the novel I describe, they've all come from Seven Dials in central London, and it's the first time they've ever been out in the countryside, because Mitcham was in the countryside back then. And they saw the huge sky, the big open sky, which they'd never seen before, and they smelt the countryside smells. And I know myself going on training courses all around the country, to different parts of the country, stepping out the van and the countryside smell hits you. And yeah, I could sort of base it on my experiences of having to drive out into the countryside to go to various training courses, yeah, over the years. Yeah, but that's London Road. That leads into Mitcham town centre, and that's where the Pagets would have walked to go to find Phipsbridge Road, which is where they were living. Okay, so I've moved up now past Mitcham town centre, and I'm now standing in Church Road, and that's Mitcham Parish Church in the background. I was going to film in Mitcham town centre, but the noise of the traffic would have just drowned my voice out completely. Plus, there's a couple of schools down there, a couple of special needs schools. There's Cricket Green and Melrose, and I don't really want to film by schools. And yeah, that's Church Road. That heads up towards like Merton Abbey, Colliers Wood. And it's just to show where the Pagets would have walked up towards try and find Phipsbridge Road. And yeah, the whole area's been completely changed since it was in the late Victorian era. There were lots of rural fields, there were lots of agriculture, but there was also a very large industrial area with lots of factories, had the gasworks. I mean, I live right next to the old gasworks, and they've just taken down the old gas holder about a year ago. They took it all down. Yeah, and where I'm pointing the camera there, that would have been Westfield, and that's where Emma would have gone to work. in the Lavender Fields. Okay, I'm now standing at the corner of Church Road and Phipsbridge Road. And this is where the Pagets would have come, they'd have walked up to find their house in Phipsbridge Road. Back then it was a very large industrial area full of lots of factories, all different industries, mainly making things that gave off very obnoxious fumes. That's why it was situated a little bit further outside London, most of the factories. The Pagets working, well, the dad and the brother work in a Japan varnish factory, which is really, really horrible place to work. They made things like linoleum, oilcloth, anything that was like, it was a really bad environment to work in, really unhealthy. The factories lasted, I think they were still there up in all through the war, and one of the factories had a massive big explosion, and it blew down a lot of the sort of factories around, a lot of the houses. So after the war, when they were rebuilding after all the bombing and everything, they completely knocked down all the factories there, and they built the Phipsbridge estate, and which was originally like 1960s, not too high rise, but I think they were about 6, 7, 8 floors. Yeah, they weren't too high rise, but sort of 1960s flats, and they started to sort of fall apart in the 90s, and they completely knocked down all the old 1960s flats, and they built low-level housing. That was about in the 90s. And I'm just showing you, that's Boundary Business Court there, and we get our parcels in there. There's like a Royal Mail place in there. We pick up parcels if we miss the deliveries. Yeah, and I mean, I'm putting up old pictures of what Church Road looked like back in the Victorian time, but I'm just saying that factory in the distance there, that used to be a garage, like where they took cars, like these boy racer cars, where they have all these customised bits put on them and tinted windows and whatnot. Well, that's what that garage was, and I put up a picture of how it looked when it was an old factory. But they knocked that factory down, and they built these flats here about a year ago. I mean, obviously the factory, it wasn't listed or whatever, and because it's very old, it looks like early Victorian. Well, they knocked it down and they built those flats there, yeah. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk up to what's called Fox's Path, which is an alleyway that goes off of Church Road and leads up to where I live. But it probably would have been one of the routes that Emma could have taken towards Westfield, which is where she worked cutting lavender. And I'm just going to walk up there now. Right, this is a little alleyway off of Church Road, and this is where Emma would have walked towards the lavender field every morning to work. And it'd have probably been a bit further down Miles Road, but I'm not going back that way. I'm going to go back. This is a bit easier. This is like a little alleyway off of Church Road. It's called Fox's Path, and I mean, all these houses here, these would have all been lavender fields years ago, or fields used for like market garden crops and things like that. And this is what would have all been fields back in the Victorian era. As I said earlier, most of the when the railways came here, most of the land was sold off by like the landowners who owned the land, and they built houses on them. This is the back of Boundary Business Court here. This would have been an old factory. I'll probably look up to see what it was back then. But this is yeah, this alleyway. You've got to be careful walking down here. There's quite a lot of dog mess, so you have to be careful. And yeah, that's just to show what would have been here before. I'm going to put some pictures up of what the Lavender Fields look like. It's a shame because they're in black and white pictures, obviously taken back in the Victorian era, so you can't really get a sense of the lovely purpley mauve colour, you know, of the Lavender Fields. Yeah, but as I say, yeah, they all got sold off and developed, and I think that's the last one there with Potter and Moore, which went, I think, in the late Victorian era. So yeah, so this is where Emma would have come and worked, cutting lavender. She wasn't very good at it, but she worked here for a while in the Lavender Fields. Okay, yeah, I'm just walking up, just live over there, and I'm just gonna cut in now a bit of fair green, and then some filming in Bedford I did back in April 2019, before the pandemic, of the old Bedford Workhouse where poor old Emma ended up. Yeah, okay.
Okay, once again I've had to delete the audio for this footage I took of Mitcham Town Centre because I didn't have an external mic. Sounded awful, you could hardly hear my voice. So this is just to show you Mitcham Fair Green. And this is where the fair was held every year in August, going back, I don't know, medieval times, something like that. And this is where Emma and her sister went. It's just an old picture of it. This is where Emma and her sister went to have a nice time at the fair, and this is where Emma met this fairground worker guy and ran off with him. Yeah, they moved the fair, I think it was in the 1920s or 30s, they moved it because it just got too big for that area, that space there. And they moved it up into Mitcham Common. Yeah, so it's not held there anymore, but it's still called Fair Green, Mitcham Fair Green. Yeah. Okay, it's just showing you Fair Green, Mitcham Town Centre with its awful one-way system. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so this is the remains of Bedford Workhouse. And unfortunately, imagine my horror when I looked up Peter Higginbottom's fantastic workhouse website, only to read that it burnt down in January 2019, and it's April 2019. Oh, because we don't have time to do any of this stuff in the school term. We have to wait for the kids' holidays. Anyway, this is where Emma would have come to the workhouse, and she stayed here for about 4 months. Like looking at me like I'm a nutter because I'm talking to myself. Yeah, unfortunately most of it burnt down 3 months ago. Oh. Eh? Yeah, so there we go. I'm just going to walk up and get a bit closer. You can see the top of the roof there is all burnt. The actual shell of the building. This is the original building, dated 1790s. It's actually listed
The rest has been demolished, and it's actually part of what's now known as the Bedford North Hospital Wing, because we're north of Bedford. Okay, Bedford's a little sort of provincial town, sort of middle England, in Bedfordshire. It's the county town of Bedfordshire, and Emma ends up here after various adventures and scrapes. Right, as you can see, this is part of the damage, the fire damage. They've got a hoarding in front of it, but you can see, you know, I mean, it's terrible. It's a listed building, 1795 I think it is. Oh, it's awful. Apparently they reckon it was started deliberately. I'm not too sure whether they know what really happened. It's all covered with hoarding at the moment. Oh, it's a shame. Of course, no chance of getting anywhere near it because it's an unsafe structure now because of the fire. But yeah, this is where Emma spent about 4 months. I'm just going to actually walk around the other side to film what used to be the infirmary. Okay, so once again I've had to delete the audio off of this because the day I was filming it was really, really windy and the wind just cut my voice out and you couldn't hear anything. But this is the side part of the old Bedford Workhouse, and that sort of octagonal building there, that's actually the chapel, I think. And I'm going to put a picture up to show. There it is there. That's what it looked like before the fire. And yeah, that's just to show what's left of the building. It's just a complete shell. It's a complete wreck after the fire. And yeah, that's it, unfortunately. I mean, you couldn't go in there anyway before the fire. It was all locked down and it closed and everything. I have seen a few pictures online, which I think were taken by sort of urbex, these people that go in and, you know, film all these derelict buildings. I'm sure they took a few pictures online, yeah. But anyway, this is where Emma ended up for a few months. And yeah, the remains of Bedford Workhouse. Right, I'm in Bygrave Road, Colliers Wood, and this is the final setting for the novel. This is where Emma ends up. She sort of lives, first of all, in like rooms above a shop on Colliers Wood High Street, which I think was called Merton Road in those days, I think. I have to look it up. So, let's get some bearings. That's Colliers Wood High Street, that main road there. We're in Bygrave Road. And traffic's terrible today. It's a Friday. I've parked in Sainsbury's and walked down. I have to do a little bit of shopping, and I've parked in there and walked down. Yeah, I mean that building there, the white one, that used to be the Brown and Root Tower. It was a famous sort of high-rise office block. It used to be Brown and Root Insurance. Then they moved out in around I don't know, mid-90s or something, and it was derelict. The whole building was derelict for about 10 years, and you know, it got all smashed up, vandalised, and all the windows were smashed, and they used to have pigeons flying in and out of it. And I used to say to my ex-husband, I used to say, that thing's got to be the biggest pigeon coop in the whole world, isn't it? Because that was anything that was happening there, had pigeons flying in and out. Yeah, that's a Brown and Root Tower. The tube station's there just in front of it. But yeah, that's just a tube station there. I'm just going to walk along Bygrave Road and just go to show you where Emma ended up. And I'm just going to walk to the end and film right at the ends. Okay, so this is the far end of Bygrave Road where I was standing earlier. I was standing at the ends, at the Colliers Wood High Street ends. And this is Wandle Park. And I've set the house where Emma eventually ends up living with her sort of boyfriend, Rivers, around here. I mean, you know, these houses obviously, you know, they wouldn't have been here back in the 1870s. These look sort of like Edwardian. So all this would have been like open fields. You would have had Colliers Wood High Street, you would have had that, and a few sort of shops dotted either side, but back then most of this would have been open. Actually, Wandle Park did have a big house, I think it's called a Wandle Park House or something. Yeah, so that's sort of the inspiration for her coming to live here. Yeah, so that's it. This is where the novel ends. Not really going to give away any spoilers, but this is where it ends. And yes, her journey goes all the way from Seven Dials to Bedford, and back down to Mitcham, and then ends up here in Colliers Wood. I mean, that's a sewage farm there, and we're getting the stink of it. Yeah, it's really strong. Yeah, and I don't know, that might have been, I'll have to have a look, that might have been here, I don't know, it was back in the 1870s, I don't know, but it's quite old, that site, and the buildings look quite old, the buildings look Victorian, not the one in the foreground. There's one, oh God, I just shut the gate now, but there's one right over the back that looks Victorian. Yeah, and that's it, and this is the end of the vlog, and yeah, and we're going to walk back through Wandle Park back towards where the car's parked in Sainsbury's. Yeah, we're going to go there now. Yeah, I mean, you can leave some comments if you want to, I don't care, good or bad, I don't care. I know these vlogs I make are amateur and rubbish, and the editing's a bit naff, I know that. I know my kids keep on telling me that they're rubbish. I don't care, I know they are. I'm not a professional video maker, I'm a telephone engineer. So there you go. Okay, that's the end of the vlog, and if you want to buy the book, it's Lavender Fields by Angie Northey, and it's available on Amazon. Yeah, on paperback and ebook. Okay, there we go, that's it.